Ladies and gentlemen, we are live, direct straight to you, and I am convincing Jim to buy yet another dingus. This is
That
what I
wasn't
do.
hard.
I'm an enabler. I'm an influencer. All I have to do is drop a link to something in the chat, and if it's below a certain dollar amount, Jim doesn't even look. He just buys it.
Yeah, you're below my threshold with that. I'm just like, yeah, I'll take one.
Yeah, this is like,
Can I have cheese with that?
$80 for a router. Can't beat it. Can't beat it. So, with that being said, we're going to talk about Ohm's Law. We're going to get right into it. We have a special guest for you guys tonight, and he's getting less and less special by the moment because he's been on the show before. This is 8060M Dennis of Denco battery fame.
Hello.
And I figured we're going to start talking about electricity. And Dennis is on short time. He's got to get out of here pretty soon because he has to go save the world with his hidden superhero powers. I mean, you can tell with how mild-mannered Dennis is that he's definitely hiding something.
Okay.
It's got to be superpowers.
I know what he's doing later.
Well,
You might just have gas. I mean, I don't
yeah,
know.
it's good to be on again. Thanks for having me on. Ohm's Law, I'm going to admit up front that I know all about Ohm's Law as much as you can Google. So
Right.
I am not an electrician, although I deal with electricity often. So
He knows where the sparkly bits are.
they needed a fourth. You can't have 3 squares. You got to have 4 squares.
Right.
You need 4
Right.
squares. Yeah. And we all are.
Frank,
square.
you are correct. And Greg's starting off the day. My man, Greg. Greg, how are you doing? $4 super sticker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Hit it, Jim.
I'm getting there. Hold on. There we go.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thank
it,
you very
Greg.
much, Greg.
Yeah.
So we're
breaking.
breaking the fifth wall. The fourth wall is talking directly to the audience, which is what we do every single time. We've already broken that one many, many times. The fifth wall, we're going to do a little bit of math on stream. And Dennis is right. He's admitted that he's not an expert. I am not an expert. This is not my forte, but it is something that is on your technician test and your hams license. And we wanted to kind of go over how you could apply this to certain things, maybe to solar panels, maybe to sizing up batteries, maybe to a couple of things inside of our hobby. And so our classic thing that you see is the pie chart, the PIE and the VIR chart in your ham radio technician license guide, your manual. And those are calculations that you can use to switch between voltage, current, and resistance, or any direction of those three. And, high school algebra finally has a use. I thought Jim got up and exited stage left there for a second.
No, it's the freaking cat.
We just got flashed by the cat.
She might have showed her hoo-ha, yeah.
That's a catastrophe. Catastrophe.
Yeah, catastrophe, that's right.
So let me pop that
It
on the
was
stage.
just like this. It was like,
Oh, yes. We are not going to talk about Jim's new call sign. You have to be a member of the supporters chat to know about Jim's new call sign.
Yeah, unless you're a member of the supporters, you don't know about Jim's new call sign.
Right. So you can Google Ohm's Law calculator and make life very easy for you. This is how I'm going to get away with not doing a whole lot of math on stream. So we're going to talk
there you
about, let's see, we want 12 volts, which is what, technically 13.8 is what most of our ham radio gear runs on.
It's just like
And-
dividing, right, and multiplying. It's
It
not.
is. It's right here.
Okay.
Right there.
We just don't do math on stream, Jim.
I know, but I'm in like a regular calculator. Okay. I mean, there's no, funny symbols in it.
Oh, true, yeah. And we're going to put in, let's see, power watts, 100 watts. Jim with his fancy calculator brain, how many amps is that going to be?
I'm sorry, I was putting up super chats. I didn't hear your numbers. What did you say? I wasn't listening, son. Wasn't listening.
13.8 volts, 100 watts. How many amps?
That's going to be about 7 and some change.
7 and some change. There you go. This resistance number is not the 50 ohms resistance that we normally talk about in radio. We'll get to that in a minute. But Jim was right, 7.2 amps. That's what it's going to take at a bare minimum to put out 100 watts of RF. There are a lot of losses. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, before you get on a roll, there we got some housekeeping.
Do
Other Andy, member for 16 months, brother.
16.
And we have a new member, Brian, K0HO. Brand new. Thank you. You're still shiny. Thank you
our
very
friend
much.
Dennis is being stealthy again because when you do those, it mutes all of our microphones except for Dennis. Dennis, you have open mic during fanfare.
I don't know how that happens.
I don't know
I guess
either.
it's
You're
the
the
sheer
only one.
power of Hamden thoughts just busting through the wall. So
It is. It is.
Right.
So the role that I was kind of in the middle of, and thank you very much, Brian and Andy, is that there are some losses in the whole equation. You have a radio that does a whole bunch of fun stuff with it, like shows you a waterfall, or maybe has a built-in tuner, or maybe has some filters or something. So you're going to want to size up a little bit. You're going to want to plus size that from 7 amps to, say, 12 amps in order to get an hour's worth of transmission out of a 100-watt radio. Does that sound about right, Dennis?
Yep, with
Yep.
some asterisks.
So tell us about those asterisks.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the losses, right? So if you're talking about, we don't have just pure RF going out. When we pump in the power, there's all kinds of little magic that happens. It involves smoke sometimes, and then you get what you call, well, in the battery world, it's conversion efficiencies. So it's a similar concept in radios where the power is being used for other things other than just purely pumping it out.
Right.
Phil Muth, thank you. Appreciate it, man. Phil has been a member for a year now. Happy anniversary. And then we also have...
Is that the Wood anniversary?
My Lord, they're rolling in. Okay. 1979 Iceman, $4.99 Super Chat. Thank you, Iceman. And Mike, N2MAK. Mike K, I can't pronounce your last name, Mike, is a new member, and we appreciate that, sir.
So Mike, if you don't know, has a fantastic YouTube channel where he does all kinds of POTA experiments, not just making POTA activations, but like 1 watt POTA activations. So he tries just a little extra, just a little harder to get those.
He made a bunch of contacts on I forget which
Mercury,
which Cartina he has. It might have been the Mercury.
but that's where we first saw him do his 1 watt POTA activation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike is good, folks.
Thank you, Mike.
So,
yes.
Steve?
Yep. So Dennis,
Steve, I'm going to take away your clicker.
you're just too slow on it, man.
I'm not too slow.
There are times of being...
I'm trying to do the production back here. You're the talent. The talent.
Oh, yeah.
Talent. Talent on, son.
So one of the things that Dennis brought up real quick was 50 ohms, and this was in our back chat when I was inviting him to be the expert on tonight's show. He's like, I know what ohms are. I've seen 50 ohms. The question that comes up a lot is, why do we choose 50 ohms? Dennis, what do you think?
I think someone just decided for it to be 50 ohms one year. And then it just kind of settled on that.
You need it to be something. It needs to be a standard.
How
It
many
might as well be
beers
50.
he had that week?
Yeah.
I had 50 beers that week. Let's just make it 50 ohms.
And you know, I forget the article I read about this, but there was something about how it was 75 ohms or something like that for a period of time. And then for whatever reason, it shifted to 50 and everyone kind of agreed, okay, let's go with that.
And TV coax is 75 ohms.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe
TV coax and car stereo coax is 75 ohms. And then you can get the twin lead for your TV, which is 300 ohms? 200 ohms or 300?
Yep, 300.
Yeah. And that
That's
little
old
dingus
school
that you
TV.
had that switched your 2-wire rabbit ears into the F-type coax connector was actually your first experience with the Ballon when you were
With
like
the
7
Ballon.
years old. And your daddy said, go fix that TV.
Never
and
knew
you
what
went,
it was.
That was
Put
so
that
you could
Ballon
hook
on.
up your Atari and play
And
Pong with your sister.
75 ohm coax can be used in ham radio too for certain things.
It can be. There's some really interesting stuff you can do with that.
Garth, thank you. Garth's been a member for 9
Garth.
months. Awesome.
So I'm going to get the number wrong. Thank you, Garth. But the dipole antenna is what, 72 ohms if you build it properly? And that's probably where that 75 came from, was because it was the closest they could make to 72.
Huh.
That's the first
So
time I've heard that.
Yeah. And then
Too
you
bad it
start when
wasn't
you
73 ohms. That would have been awesome,
yeah.
Yeah,
right?
been a lot better.
Raphael's got it. 76, he says.
Okay. Mathy.
See, I'm not making it up. Sometimes I know things.
I thought you were. I thought
Sometimes.
I thought you've been drinking and reading Wikipedia late at night.
Yeah. And your radio, when you see that 1.0 to 1 SWR, 1.2 to 1 SWR, 2 to 1 SWR, that's that kind of happy range that you're in, somewhere between 25 and 75 ohms is what you're actually measuring when you get in there. 50 ohms is just a compromise between loss and power, is what Ron is saying.
Hollywood has weighed in.
75 and 35, I was close.
That's pretty interesting too. The most efficient for transmitting is 35, so you just do the happy medium.
Yeah.
Right.
A compromise. Yep. Okay.
And so we were talking about solar a little bit earlier. Put that back on the screen there. And one of the things that you can do when you're trying to figure out solar panels is your typical solar panel might be a 100-watt panel, and your open voltage might be, I got to clear out some of these numbers. Your open voltage might be 20 watts, your open circuit voltage, the 20 volts, the most amount of power it's going to put out in absolute best direct sunlight. So then you want to figure out what's that going to look like. And that's going to look like 5 amps. Now I need to have a piece of wire that can transfer 5 amps. What kind of wire should I use? You start filling in the blanks of the knowledge that you might have. So you might want to go look up like an AWG American wire gauge chart and figure out what the right gauge of wire is for 5 amps at 20 volts. Because now you know it's 5 amps is the maximum amount of amperage that solar panel is going to produce.
And someone mentioned it. I went and found it. This is the graphic that was mentioned earlier. And I saw something similar to this in one of my study guides for extra. A little simpler than this, a lot simpler than this, but there's pretty much every formula you would need to figure out the stuff. Once you can.
I don't do much in square roots.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. So that's saying current equals the square root of power over resistance. Are those all equivalents then? If I mathed the power, so watts, so 100 watts over the resistance of something, and take
12
that
volts.
square root, huh?
So 12 volts would be I, 100 watts would be P, resistance would be whatever the resistance is,
No,
and then that equals the amount of
volts
amps.
12 volts is not I is amps.
I is amps. Okay. So those are the
So-
3 different calculations that you can use to arrive at I for amps. I always
That's
get the
how-
I
nice.
wrong.
That's
That's
how
nice.
I read this.
It tells you what's in the middle there.
Yeah. In these
Look at that.
big giant parts right here in the middle that are colored.
big-
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's been a simpler version of this. There's a pi, and then there's
PIE and VIR.
VIR. That's the other one, yeah. Which is VIR is the basic Ohms law. So amps equals
So that's
volts.
this one here, Jim.
Yeah.
And this one says PIV instead of PIE. But again, letters in
Right.
math is weird.
Right.
And a tip that I did, I took my ham test. I'm so old. I took my technician test on paper at the ham club. I actually
you
went
had
in
a
and
different
grabbed my note paper, and very first thing I did was I just brain dumped onto the paper things like this, so that I could do the math and so forth with
Yep.
the test and get it right.
Yep. You know what's
And Ron is
interesting?
correct.
What did Ron say?
And Ron says it's a simple graphic. If you cover up what you are looking for, it will show you the formula. So if I cover up the R, you use V divided by I to get R. If I cover up the
Right.
I, it's V divided by R to get I. If I cover up the V, it's I times R equals V. And that's all that this thing here is doing. And Jim is absolutely correct. You can get your $3 grocery store calculator and get to the other end of this pretty quickly.
I think the biggest one that people tend to get confused on, or at least that I've heard people get confused on, is watts. And to me, watts was like one of the first things I ever learned when I started learning about electricity in high school electric
it's one
class.
of the most familiar terms.
Right.
Everyone talks in watts, even the muggles. So,
Right. Exactly. And then once you have any two of those, you can figure out the other one. So,
Chris, did you get to use your smartphone on your test? That was against the rules. You could have been cheating. I know you weren't, but I was actually, when I took my extra test, again on paper, uphill both ways in the snow, one of the guys sitting next to me had his smartphone, and the test proctors, the VEs, didn't catch it.
That wasn't too long ago, right, Tio?
Well, when I was taking it on paper?
No. Well, I mean, the paper thing.
Yeah, it
In
wasn't
general.
that long ago. Yeah, I mean, COVID is when the online testing really
just
gained
talking about
popularity.
Remote. Because I was thinking that does sound old, but it actually isn't, because I took my extra in 2017 and I used paper.
Yeah. I think I did
So I'm
mine in
just trying to
2017 or
think. I was
2018
like,
also.
What was my extra on an iPad or something? I was trying to think, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So
It's not
there
that
was
long.
a VEC from Alaska, a ham radio club from Alaska that was starting to do remote testing, but then Richard from Signal Stuff was like this close to finishing it, and COVID happened, and he's like, we got to push this thing through to the end, and he just powered through, like took 3 nights and didn't sleep and got the whole thing done. And we've got exam tools now, and Glarg uses exam tools, and you can get your ham radio license any time of the day or night, any day of the week, by doing an online test with exam tools through hamstudy.org.
and there are more than one VE available in the Discord pretty much anytime if you ask. Dennis, are
yeah.
you a VE?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't
Charles?
been through the
Get with
test
it.
yet, but I have.
No,
I
I'm
have
not.
both, Glarg and what's the other one?
I'm with ARRL. There's W5YI.
Mm-hmm.
I just joined Glarg because that's Amberjack is with
Oh,
But
Glarg.
There you go.
if you remember back before the remote
That's what
sections,
I think you can.
I think it was Laurel that did electronic submission, so you got your call sign right away, like within a day. Back then, now
I know-
that's
Back
normal,
then.
but
I took my tech in my general in 2019, and it took like 3 weeks because
Yeah.
Cave C, Central Alabama VEC, apparently use paper,
yeah, the paper
pencils,
submission, it would take
mail and
forever.
stuff.
And they went Pony Express probably too.
I believe they
Yeah.
did, judging by the median age.
No, it
of
was
the
actually
gentleman.
orally passed.
From
Yeah.
person to person.
among
Person to
the-
person.
Around a fire ring.
Every
Right.
once in a while, it's
and then
stalled.
someone would make a trek all the way to Connecticut and
Right. And
deliver
share
the
that
final
information.
message. Yeah.
Ken Roberts, thank you very much for being a member. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks,
That's
Steve.
what I was going to say. Ken Roberts, fantastic. Oh,
Holy
Taylor.
mackerel.
Wow.
Taylor, those are
Hey, Taylor, thank you.
reals. I don't know what that,
Yeah, I don't know that currency.
I think those are reals.
let's
Taylor's
see.
got
Let's
it.
see what the Google says.
Taylor's got a-
$27.46 US. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Taylor.
oddly specific when you translated it into dollars. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Taylor.
Qatar. That is awesome. And that number will change in 15 minutes. So,
Right.
don't go doing any international banking based off of the math that you see on this stream. Thank you very much,
Actually,
Taylor.
Just so they know, I posted my new radio that I haven't really talked about yet in supporters group, so they know about it.
Yeah. Are you gonna just
For now.
tease them, or are you gonna tell them now?
Oh, I'm just gonna.
Oh no,
I
you just
put
posted
in
it
there.
now.
I just
Okay,
posted
so you
it,
gotta
so I got to give them a couple of days.
yeah. Wait till Saturday at least. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Saturday, you normal people, you'll find out.
That's right.
We love you
Oh,
all.
right.
You're all are
All
awesome.
kinds of secret
But-
dealing in supporter
Maybe,
chat.
maybe,
Right.
and maybe by then I'll be able to know how to use it right.
Work the software, turn it on
Yeah.
without Abe telling you. if you'd like to be in the supporters private chat and on our Zoom call every month with our supporters, there is a thing to join down below.
Join button.
And there's a join button on all of our channels, minus Adam Dennis. There's one on the Primates channel as well. So
You can't post that because that'll just give it away. Dang it.
Don, that narrows it down to about 6 or 7 different radios that it could be. So still not giving
Could be
anything
a
away.
Yaesu,
Right.
Could be an Anon. Could be a Hermes. Could be a
Flex.
could be a Flex.
Could be an
He did-
ICOM. We know Don loves ICOMs.
Yep. Could
So
be
does
that
Chuck.
too.
So does
Yeah,
Chuck.
I've got one. I got
Don,
one.
thank you for being a member. We appreciate
Thanks,
it,
Don.
brother. Nemesis.
Don has been a He's been a
All
huge
right.
help so far.
Don is hugely helpful and a nemesis.
Yes,
And a nemesis.
simultaneously.
Well, he's usually Jim's
Yes.
nemesis. He likes me and you. Ate breakfast with us every day, man. Well, except the last couple.
Yeah, every
maybe the
time
last
we emerged in Huntsville,
That's
we'd
right.
see Don down there and have breakfast.
Don was
with him.
holding down the cafeteria, man.
That's right, Mike. Chuck is
Restaurant.
leading the charge on the new Xiegu.
There is. Yeah.
Oh man.
Chuck has his hands on it. So a funny story. One of the vendors, one of the well-known vendors, and I'm not going to name any names on purpose. One of the well-known vendors, I was talking with them about information on the new Xiegu radio that comes out, and they said we'll have some information for you tomorrow, which is today. And I said, great, let me know what it is. And then today he comes on and he says, yeah, I talked to Xiegu. They said to ask you, Steve. Like, how would I know more about their product than they do? I mean, I probably do, don't get me wrong, but I shouldn't know more about their new product than they do. So there will be a video coming out. And Frank, you were right. Let's get back to Pi. I was going to ask Dennis a question.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Frank. I was going to ask Dennis a
Appreciate it.
question about sizing up solar systems. If I had, I don't know, let's say I had a, I don't know, weird number, 30 amp hour battery. How would I go about figuring out a good solar panel for that?
Well, it really doesn't matter what the capacity is of your battery. What you're trying to figure out is how much you'll be using
Mm-hmm.
in the field. Typically, and this is just from experience, I don't really know the hard numbers, but typically, if I have an 857 and it's known as a very power hungry mobile radio, it's a 100 watt, but it on full transmit, it says in the spec sheet that it will go up to 22 amps. I've never reached that high.
No.
I think I've reached maybe 15 or 17 with digital.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure about that, but just take their word for it and size for that. So 22 amps usage, and let's say you're using one of the worst digital modes like FT8 or duty cycle. It's not the worst for the mode. It's the worst
Duty
for duty
cycle.
cycle.
Yeah.
He said,
Nice
dude,
walk back there.
Then you're probably about 50% duty cycle if you're just leaving that thing on all the time and trying to get as many FT8 contacts as you can. So what does that mean? You have to really calculate how much power do I need to supplement to my battery in order to keep operating at 22 amps, 100 watts divided by 2, right? So for half duty cycle. So that's kind of like my lengthy answer is you probably try to figure out, okay, I need to supplement something like 11 amps per hour into my battery. And there's going to be conversion losses again with the sun and those amps coming in being converted by the controller into the battery. So maybe let's call it 15 amps. So that's going to be a sizable solar panel if you really want to do it that high, right?
Yep. So you can take your math and you already know that a 100-watt solar panel will give you 5 amps. So if we did, Dennis wants 15 amps, let's do 200. I know the answer's wrong. That gives you 10. I mean, we can do that kind of math on stream. So 300 gives you 15 amps. We're going to need 300 amps of solar to keep that battery happy for that operating environment that Dennis described. FT857, 300 watts of solar
300 amps would blow up the world.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
pretty much.
Luckily, it was on screen, so I don't have to put an on-screen correction of the thing that I said. So FT857, 100-watt radio, and pulling 15 amps, you want to put 15 amps back into it per hour. Pulling 11 amps, you want to put 15 amps back into it per hour to be safe. Did I get that right?
Yeah. And that's kind of a worst case scenario. I'm talking about 100-watt QRO, half duty cycle. That's a lot of consumption, You're not really doing that in the field. So
and 15
in
amp would be
practical
300
terms,
watts. So, right?
Yeah. So in practical terms, you probably want to do maybe like 100-watt solar panel and transmit it like 20 watts. And that's
Right.
more than enough to cover you for the day, right? And just don't have a super tiny battery attached to it, right?
Right.
Have
You
something
don't want to do a
like
3
Have
amp
some
hour battery.
capacity.
Yeah, that's where capacity will make up for when someone stands in front of your solar panel and you got to yell at them to get out of there.
Yes,
And,
especially if
just
you
keep the thing running for at least an hour. And of course, the sun isn't all day. You probably get about a good 6 hours of sunlight.
Depends on where you are. Yeah, if you're in the northern tier state, it's probably less than that.
That used to be me.
Yeah, I think you got sunlight like 3 hours a month or something.
Yeah.
But then I have I have my True SDX, which is on receive it takes about 130 milliamps, and on transmit I forget what it was, maybe 5 amps at most. I don't even know, maybe a lot less than that. But I have a 5 amp hour battery packed with that thing, and it's pretty much it lasts the whole day.
Yeah,
So-
you almost never run that dry unless you're
Yep.
really doing something serious. So one of the other things that I have run into, and I had to ask Jason KM4ACK this because I know he would know the answer, and I know Dennis knows the answer too, but I'm giving the credit where credit was due. At I want to say it was Orlando Hamcation. I asked Jason this question and he gave me the answer to it. So if I am walking through the Hamfest and I see one of those weird 20-watt roll-up solar panels, what am I going to do with a 20-watt solar panel?
One weird
So,
trick.
Yeah,
Can you make that a little bigger, Steve?
How about that?
Embiggen.
And big in that, so
That's the next biggest size because it's a responsive site. You just get the left side menu.
Okay.
Hold on, let me scroll down. Yeah, it goes to cell phone mode.
Lord. Okay.
Oh boy.
Programmers.
I didn't write this. I just like this one because it's pretty. It looks like graph paper. So with a 20-watt solar panel, we don't really know. We're going to assume that it's 12 volts because it's at a Hamfest. So we take that kind of as a rough assumption. It probably does have most of your 12 volt.
most of them are at least 18.
Yeah, they're not
Panels.
12-volt solar panels, Steve.
Yeah, most of the panels that are rated at 12 volts are really 18 kind of
Plus.
on load, and then this open circuit thing. If there's nothing and you just short the two cables together and let the smoke out, that's when you're hitting that 20 volts. So you can probably rough gauge around 18. So that's going to put out 1 amp. So what can you do with a 1 amp solar panel? But see, this is how Ohm's Law comes in to help you out. It gives you that missing link. What can I do with a 1 amp solar panel? And yes, Lon, you are correct.
You can charge
Charge
for
your
a long
Motorola
time.
Razr.
I have panels, like I have a top solar panel that supposedly puts out 14.4 volts on a barrel jack, and it also charges devices over 5 volt USB. So I find that useful if you're camping or something, you could just always keep your phone attached to it and it'll keep that thing topped up. But in terms of like ham radio, a 20-watt solar panel ain't doing much.
No.
If
So your
anything,
three-
you're like trickle charging your little battery.
So your 3 amp hour battery, what's the 3 amp hour battery that would take 3 hours at 1C to charge?
And we're also skipping the whole how you don't get what it's rated for, right? This 20 watt solar panel will deliver 10 watts probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're never going to get that absolute best direct sunlight conditions, number one. And number two, it's probably 20 years old sitting on some table at a Hamfest somewhere.
But it's better than nothing.
I've got like a 60 watt that's about It's about, 8 by 8 when it's folded up.
Tim, that is a great question. I have no freaking idea why current's
we got
notated as an I.
We got the E earlier in the chat, and it was electromotive force. Is
Yeah, Lee
where we
said
got
that-
E from.
Yeah, Lee said that was changed back in the 60s, is what he was saying.
Yeah, I have no idea why it's I. I think of inductance when I see I.
Right.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
actually
'cause-
H.
Yeah, because that's totally legitimate, and I think of that all the time.
Was Henry his last name or his first name? Mr. Inductance.
I think that was his last name.
Because that's the other thing that's really interesting about this. These were these people's last name. The guy on the thumbnail for tonight's show was George Ohm, the guy who he didn't actually create this law. He kind of, if you read up on some of the history, he kind of figured out that these things kind of relate to each other, and it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just close enough for the kind of math that we do. And he's like, "Hey guys, what do you think about this?" And can you imagine going into your ham club, coffee Wednesday morning? And
I made a
talking
law.
about, I think this happens because I did all these different things, and this is how it always works out in all of these different directions. And they're like, "Shut up, George. Just shut up. You don't know what you're talking about." And like 6 months later, I'm going to call it Ohm's Law. George, you've been talking about this for 6 months, every freaking Wednesday for 6 months. Just shut up already. And now today it's Ohm's Law, and we don't even know that he was George Ohm. We just that's just what it's called.
So Brian mentioned this. It comes from the French name for current. And then
Yep.
Frank from...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you were right. Ken Lewis.
And then Frank said it comes from intensity du courant, meaning current intensity. I was thinking it was French. And Ken spelled it like all proper French.
So technically we're wrong. We're abbreviating, and I should be saying that batteries are in ampere hours.
Yes.
Right. Which
I
is from
shouldn't say
Mr.
amp hour.
Ampere.
Yes.
Andre, as he's known to his contemporaries.
Andre Ampere.
Right. And then inductance is L, but it's measured in henries, which is even weirder.
Exactly.
Okay, that was awkward. Okay, Hollywood, I was waiting for somebody to get there, and it's appropriate that it was you.
I
There
got
we
nothing
go.
on that one. I'm
Well,
not
that's-
as smart as Hollywood is.
That's force equals mass times acceleration, and E is
Energy times the speed of light squared.
energy equals
Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared.
Yeah.
So is MC squared equal to I times R?
Only when you take
No,
the
it's just
square root
loosely
of pi.
related. And so the same thing I was talking about with George Ohm is the same thing that happened with Albert Einstein when he came up with E equals MC squared. He didn't draw this thing out on paper and say, this is absolutely what it is. He kind of theorized it, which is why we call it the theory of relativity, and put it out there. And it has been loosely proven over time. And it's kind of interesting if you look up the history of that as well. It kind of goes through that same kind of thing where he's talking about, he's like, I'm not sure, but this is what I think. What do you guys think? And now we all kind of think that he's just a genius. And there he is.
Now, one thing that also tends to confuse people a little bit, and it's complicated, and I'm not saying I understand it completely, is when you're doing something with the battery and you're using some amount of current off the battery to create so many watts. So let's say you have a 100 amp hour battery and you're using 5 amps of current off that battery at 12 volts. So that's 60 watts. And that turns on an inverter. My numbers are probably wrong. I mean, the math is right, but the numbers I'm just pulling up. And you're running an inverter on that. So I don't know how to math from the DC current I see getting pulled, which I can directly tie to the battery, right? It's a 100 amp hour battery. If I'm pulling 1 amp, that means I can run for 100 hours or 50 amps for 2 hours or whatever. So in my notional thing, if I'm using 1 amp, that means I should have 100 hours of run time or whatever I said, 5 amps, I don't know. But then when you run that into an inverter, yes, you have, as Dennis mentioned, you've got loss because of the transformation of DC to AC, because that conversion is inefficient, and you're burning up a lot of your electric as heat energy. But is there a way to be able to determine how long I can run an AC appliance, for example, on an inverter plugged into a DC battery? The only way I can think of is just to directly measure the DC and not care what the AC side is doing on that inverter.
Yeah, with the
for the
output,
most
what it's
part, you
drawing.
have to. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
I was just going to say how many amps it's drawing. You could figure it out that way, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, that was the only way I could do it, was just say, okay,
Funny
well,
you should
the
mention that.
There's a
DC
lot
side
more
is doing
gear
this.
that we can attach to the battery side of things. The only thing I could think of on the AC side is like a kilowatt, where you can watch that. But
That's a
you're
product
still-
name, not a kilowatt, like the
but it's
unit
still
of
not
measure of
showing you the
electricity.
draw. So,
Yeah.
in situations like that, I think inverters have efficiencies from like 85 to 97%, depending on how good the inverter is. And so I just kind of make a generalization. If I make a huge battery, like a 320 amp hour milk crate battery, right? I know the amount of kilowatt hours I could expect out of that on a DC side, but then I just multiply it by whatever the spec sheet says is the converter efficiency or
Your
inverter,
efficiency rating.
efficiency.
Okay.
And then I'll say that's how many kilowatt hours I'm getting out of it on the AC side, and then calculate my thing. Typically, it's going to be something like a portable AC or a air compressor or something like that. That's going to be on the other end of that, so I can know how long I can use that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've got a kilowatt. I've got a couple of them, and it's interesting to look at it and go, okay, this pulls an amp and that pulls an amp, and I'm using this many watts of power, but it doesn't, unless I have the DC side set up where I can watch current, right, with like one of those inline things or something like that. Watching the AC side, which, you know, I just have no idea how long that battery's going to last if I've got a fan on or a portable air conditioner or lights or whatever.
And this is one of the things that we talk about why you should get your ham license. Like, you know, in the state of the, you know, SHTF situation, all licenses don't matter anymore and I can do whatever I want. That's great. But as Jim has this very practical example, you really have no idea what you're doing unless you practice, and you can't practice without a license in, you know, some of these examples. Now, Jim's running his Dr. Pepper fridge off of his AC plug into his AC inverter into his DC
Dr.
battery.
That's the best fridge.
The endless Dr. Pepper fridge, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, what you need to do is you need to go out and you need to plug all this stuff in and measure it and see, you know, after an hour, how much juice is left in the battery, and then extrapolate from that. And, you know, Brian mentioned it, you know, as long as you can get a specification. Dennis brought it up with the efficiency factor that should be in the owner's manual, the reference manual for your inverter. But if you don't have any of that stuff, or it's not written in English, you know, this is how you figure it out. You
threw it in the trash because you know how to hook up a red and a black wire and had to plug in an AC wire. I don't read no
stinking manuals.
Well, I mean, it's like, what? I need plug in, turn on. Okay, we're good, man.
And then you have a deeper question.
Yeah, what I do is...
Well, I mean, it's kind of a manufacturing question. It's not the end of the free world. It's just I would think that there's... I didn't realize about the conversion efficiency. I never thought about that. That makes perfect sense.
I have a fridge that's hooked up to one of my bigger batteries in the garage, and I just hooked up one of those cheap, like, what do you call those? Those meters that measures the cumulative.
The shunt?
Yeah, one of those shunt meters, and it just measures the amp hours over a 24-hour period.
One of those inline dinguses? Is that what you're...
And so I just calculate from that. I don't really care what all the the conversions are for AC and all the stuff that's going on there. I just want to see at the power source what's my amp drain when it's on, you know, high start, and then during its maintenance period of keeping things cool, and then when it shuts off, and kind of average it out for days. And so that's how I sized my solar panels for that system, is that I just made sure that I would have adequate sunlight or wattage from the solar to replenish my calculation, my average calculation for that. And there's days when it comes short, like winter days when there's not enough sun. And that's when I'll bust out the grid supplement and charge it overnight. off the main grid.
Oh, there you go.
Glenn is king of the dad jokes for tonight.
Right.
That's 2. He's got 2 on all of us. Doc Brad, how you doing, my friend? Good to see you. So these are all really good, practical, real-world things that you can do. A lot of situations, like we were talking before the show started, I just got a new internet service provider, which is why my stream is not broken. I'm in the exact same location. I just have a new provider. And
You're welcome.
the router, thank you, Jim. The router
You're
is the one
welcome
that
to
Jim's
him.
going to buy. Right,
Yep.
because Chuck told Jim, and then Jim told me, and then I went and found a way to get it for free because that's how I roll.
No, Chuck did not tell Jim. Jim
No,
told.
I was saying T.O. should say. You should
Thank you to
say the
Chuck?
same- yeah, no. To
Okay.
well, actually, I did kind of send him to something like that.
Thank you, Chuck. So
But,
the Starlink
he-
does
he
work. We'll
sold
get to that in
Jim
a
one.
second because that's kind of where I'm going with this. The new router that I got has one of those little wall warts on it, and wouldn't you know it, that wall wart puts out 12 volts at 1.5 amps. So what am I going to do? Cut that cord because I want to be able to run without being plugged in to
Power.
shore power, without being plugged into the pedestal at the campground. We've actually had a couple of power outage situations where all my DC stuff works. So my lights work and my refrigerator works and some of my stuff inside works. And I can charge my cell phones, but I can't watch TV. I can't microwave any food. I'm not going to. And I can't run my air conditioner because I don't have that set up. So I'm going to take this router and cut it. But this router also supports linking into my Starlink. But my Starlink runs on 120 volts DC, 120 volts AC. Geez, can't get that one out. And the dish itself runs on minus 48. Isn't that it? Minus 48's PoE, Jim?
Yeah, it depends on the device. Up to minus 48. It can be 24. Ask
it's
me how I
negative.
know. Ask me
Yeah.
how I know.
Well,
Yeah.
our friend Sideboom did that too with one of those phones, one of those
Yeah.
SIP phones.
Yeah.
So now I've got to
24 volt
figure
power
out a
supply,
way.
12 volt phone equals negative function.
Nice.
Or as we used to say at the fire department, a non-positive outcome.
Yes. Brian, real quick, Brian shared a link in the chat. Brian, YouTube does not send the links through to us, so we did not get that. If you can drop it in the Toads Discord or send an email, that would be fantastic. Because all we have is that you're talking about a link, and I appreciate that. So my Starlink, now I've got to figure out a way to get positive 12 volts converted into negative 48 volts to get into, get the dish to run. Because the dish itself is where all the intelligence is. I just need an Ethernet cable to plug it into this new router that we got. And we're good to go. So this is where all that math comes in.
Well, your stream looks a lot cleaner
Yeah, it does.
It is.
today.
25
Yeah.
up, 25 down.
He haven't
Nice.
dropped out today.
Oh yeah, before the show we were looking at it and he wasn't all pixel-macated like he was. Monday night was rough, son. Monday night
Yeah, it was.
rough. So
Well,
they
I'm
charge
sorry
you.
to
They
do
charge
this,
you a
guys.
router rental fee on this because they're charging me $10 a month.
Nope.
I got a jam. So
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis.
All right,
Dennis,
don't
appreciate
hurt-
it, brother.
Don't hurt anybody,
thanks for
Dennis.
having me on. Now it's
Dennis,
gonna be
what's your
an-
website?
Oh, it's denco.enterprises.
Oh,
It's a
he's so
weird
fancy.
TLD. Denco.enterprises if you want to check it out. And
Bringing it up.
yeah, we're gonna have
me
some
grab
stuff
it.
pretty soon. Stuff is
We've-
in the
We've been
works.
seeing all this seeker stuff.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, folks.
Thanks,
I will
Dennis.
catch you later.
See you,
Dennis,
Dennis.
take care, brother. Nerd.
Nerd.
All right, where's the site, Jim?
It took it a while. I think his modem is a little slow. Hold on. Okay, share.
Got it.
There you go.
It's already up.
You got it up. Okay. And
I'm
we need
younger.
to.
I can get it up faster.
Okay, I got it. There's a pill for that, son.
It is
And in the
Thursday
e-
night.
And in the end, it doesn't really matter because the end result is the same. Doc, thank you very much, and that is an outstanding dad joke.
So thank you very much, Doc. But to give credit where credit is due, if you scroll up a little bit farther, King of the Dad Jokes said that one already.
Okay. Oh, you're talking to Doc, not me.
Yeah.
But he gave a super chat, so rock on, Doc.
Just want to make sure that our friend Glenn doesn't get his feelings hurt. You know how sensitive he can be.
So Denco is a bespoke,
It's as bad as Jim.
artisanal, non-GMO, antibiotic-free
No, not that bad.
LiFePO battery. And it's very important. It's also gluten-free as well.
And he's going to be making 6 amp hour battery kits that you can assemble yourselves, which is going to be fantastic. He's going to do all the hard stuff for you. The nickel strip welding is going to be done for you, but you're going to get the BMS, the battery, the heat shrink, the cardboard paper to make it look like a nice battery kit when you're done, and it will look like this one on the the first picture here.
Yeah. These things, the little trays. This is why I've resisted messing with my own batteries, because I don't have any way to weld that. I mean, it's just a spot weld, but I'm a little shy about buying one off of AliExpress for spot welding and connecting it to the electric in my house.
Right.
So.
Oh, Aussie Ham Radio says Doc wins. So there was a question about Starlink. Starlink is almost as sensitive as our friend Glenn here is, and if there is just the tiniest little shrub in the way, the signal gets cut off, and it gets cut off like every 3 minutes, like clockwork, as it goes to that one bird. And then our friend Hamstick Eric is saying that it does develop some data storage in the device, and it realizes that it's not supposed to talk to that satellite anymore, so it'll pick another one. So it does get better over time, but I've got just the tiniest amount of leaves in the way, and it was causing Starlink to drop out.
Well, it has to be pretty much way in the open, right? I mean, more so than you would think. Like, I used to be able to shoot through the trees to get satellite TV.
Yeah,
but
same here.
It doesn't sound like you can do that.
I think it's a function of
It's not as
bandwidth,
pinpoint.
possibly, Chuck, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could also be satellite size.
From what I understand about DirecTV, it was a single satellite in geostationary orbit over the equator.
207 degrees. And
So you were pointed at
probably
one satellite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The dish doesn't move. This is
They're not my trees,
DirecTV
Frank.
in the middle 90s, but you aimed at 207 and probably about 35 or 40 degrees off the horizontal, roughly. I set up like a ton of those dishes for people.
Yeah. And Starlink is a constellation of satellites that move
Right.
across the sky in low Earth orbit. So they're constantly moving in and out of the sky above you. And the dish itself, the reason why the dish is the shape that it is because it's actually a bunch of small transceivers, and each one of them is in a little bit of a Doppler shift to steer the signal to the right satellite up in the sky.
So you can see this is some of the items in the Denco store. There you go.
Cool stuff. So Glenn is asking, can I get a 12 volt to 48 converter just for Starlink? The short answer to that is yes, but the stupid thing comes with a 120 volt AC connection, so it doesn't solve the problem. And they don't tell you whether it comes with a wall wart or a direct plug. It looks like it's a direct AC plug. So the conversion is happening inside of the dingus, and I don't know if it's 12 volts. So I have to either do some more research or just buy one with my fingers crossed and hope.
Jim's saying they make a in-motion dish, so does it track a specific satellite? Is then what that does?
No, it just comes with a different mount and a bigger surface area, I think. They've got like 3 or 4 different dishes out now, and one of their dishes, the dish itself is $2,500. The one that I got was like $500, which was really expensive, but I thought it was like the only way to get internet. And I've been disillusioned. But they do.
Yes.
They have a maritime dish, they have a in-motion dish, and part of that was government regulations. They wouldn't let you do the in-motion. Now they do. And then they have a big dish and a little dish and a round dish. So 3 dishes for home use.
I mean, 5. I would think I would just go to the junkyard and find an old DirecTV dish, of which there are probably legions of in the junkyard.
It won't work.
Okay.
So inside of the Starlink
how big
dish,
is that?
I want to say roughly 18 inches by 14 inches. It's a rectangle.
Okay.
Inside of your typical DirecTV dish, there's one radio, and that is pointed at the dish, which reflects up into the sky. Inside of the Starlink, there's 100 transceivers, and they're all pointed in one direction, and then they go slightly off frequency for Doppler effect to steer the signal to the next satellite and follow it.
They may have changed it, but there's no radio in a direct TV dish. It's just an LNA.
Just a receiver. Yeah.
Yeah, LNA or LNB. I can't remember which it is now.
Yeah.
And then your
our
receiver
friend
actually
Dan-
provided power for the LNA.
Oh, hey, thanks, Jim. So our friend Dan in San Diego, Dan in SD, the other SD, he's put out 2 videos where he has been able to use an RTL SDR to track the Starlink satellites as they go overhead. And that was pretty cool to watch that. It's one of those things that if you're a ham, it's like unbelievably amazing. And if you're not, it's like watching grass grow.
Right. We always, also, I'm still amazed that he's in San Diego because he should be in South Dakota. Because that's what we all thought. Randall, thank you very much. Randall's been a member for 10 months. Randall's one of the cool kids. You could be too.
And Randall's right.
Go ahead, Steve.
Randall's right. There's a fantastic video on YouTube on how the whole system works, which is how I know what I know about it, and I'm paraphrasing and digesting to get that back.
When we were down in Arizona for Quartz Fest, we went to the RV show, and the guy was selling what you just purchased with your Wi-Fi deal, and I was just a little skeptical if it actually worked. You know, I don't know if he was selling the whole system, but he was selling at least part of it.
Brian, I 86'd DirecTV the second that cable was available at my house. So yeah.
See, I liked it because I could take it with me, but it just got overpriced.
My wife goes to Auburn football games religiously, and she bought a portable dish TV receiver and a dish, and it's an auto. You basically aim it relatively south, and it gets power through the receiver. Plug in the receiver, yada yada, and then it'll sit out there and buzz and whir and aim itself, and then go. But that's on Dish, and I think she's like added onto her sister's account for the portable thing, so they can use it for football games.
Yeah, Jim, this one's for Chuck. We'll have to let Chuck handle this one.
All right, Chuck's on it. Jason, thank you, brother.
No. Chuck was supposed to handle that. Look at him; he's not even paying attention.
No,
Chuck's probably falling asleep. Chuck's having a stroke.
Just finding out if
Ghost
it worked.
man, absolutely, brother.
Oh, he was typing.
I was typing.
Okay, Chuck, we're still waiting. We're still waiting, Chuck.
I have no idea where that's at. You know that.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
Well, I have.
Chuck found it.
Chuck's found it.
I found it.
Chuck.
Jason, we're trying to hit the thank you button.
Thank you, Jason.
God, those computer skills are getting better every day.
That was worth it for the comic relief alone. Don, our friend, is asking, Starlink uses CGNAT. Is that correct? And where did it go? There was an answer.
CGNAT.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, I thought it did.
Right there. Starlink is CGNAT for IPv4, Don.
Jason's got Starlink, too. He's had it for a long time.
Oh, yeah. When it works fantastically. When it doesn't work, it's a humongous disappointment.
It worked great in Arizona. There was no trees anywhere.
Yeah.
We weren't near any of the cactuses, so.
Right.
Probably what you had to worry the most for there was the dust.
Yeah.
All the wind.
Oh, I can answer that one.
I think I can too. Go ahead, Steve.
A working DX commander?
A functional DX commander.
He's working up to that DX commander, man.
So as far as I get more experience with this new internet service provider that I'm using, there will be a video on my RV channel, which is Living for a Living RV on YouTube. And I'll put out some details on it and where you can get it and a discount link for you guys and everything. Right now, I am day one of using it, and I've had some tech support issues that I've had to work through, and they've done a fantastic job responding to my tech support questions, which has been good. One of the things I don't like is you can't choose the carrier. It works with AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. and I don't
Oh.
get to choose. It picks, and it picked the wrong one, and I didn't like that because I already have T-Mobile, and it didn't work very well, and I know AT&T worked better. So I contacted their tech support and said, switch this to AT&T for me because you won't let me do it. And they said, okay, done. And it's been rock solid for the stream so far.
Appreciate it, Freddie.
Thanks, Freddie.
Freddie's got a lot going on his channel. Freddie is fairly new on YouTube, but he is kicking butt and taking names, and his pencil lead is broken. So take a look at Freddie's channel if you haven't seen it.
He does a lot of the HT stuff, man.
He's done a lot of
Well,
HT
a lot of
stuff.
500 stuff too.
He did a whole bunch of all-star videos. And he's started something new, and I haven't caught up with all the videos yet. And then Freddie wants
busted
to
out the
tie
500.
All-Star into Toad's Digital, which me and Freddie
Oh, you're working on
got to
it?
talk to each other and work that out.
He figured out the DTMF tones on the 500. It didn't work or
Yes,
something, too?
I
He
heard
was
the
first
news
down
from
that.
Freddie, Ham Radio Crusader. I heard that they're first.
You
Yes.
wouldn't have heard that from me first because I never use it. But
Unless I had been using All-Star, I never would have known.
I guess that's
I just
why.
figured it was something that I had done wrong, or my All-Star was wacky or something. And I rebuilt the All-Star and still didn't work. And like right about the same time all this is going on, I saw Freddie's video where he had talked to Yesu, and Yesu said, "Yeah, but my bad, dog."
Thanks, Ken.
So, y'all go throw Freddie a sub if you would.
I dropped his link in the chat too.
Yep, awesome.
All right, so now that we have gotten all the way to this far in the show and the special guest star has left, we can start off the beginning of the show with the introductions that we missed. So Dennis, we already kind of gave him an introduction, and he's disappeared, so we don't have to do that anymore. And if we did, he wouldn't know about it. But Chuck, what's going on your world over there, my friend?
I'm in the middle of a video for a inverter. It's funny, we were talking about it, and Ape and I chat a little bit. I've got one of those clamp-on meters, and I was finding different. I was like 0.2 on the inverter and 25.5 on the other one. And Ape
On the
says
DC
it's
side?
yeah, he says probably the inverter is the AC side, and I was testing on the DC side, so that he says about 10% difference, something like that. That would be about right.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there trying to film and like, why aren't these things saying the same thing, you know? But yeah, nice little inverter. That I did the actually, if you guys haven't seen my video on the soldering iron, that ISO tip thing, that thing is really cool.
Did you? I haven't watched that video yet, Charles. Did you like it?
I did. I did run it. I ran it dead yesterday, but I did quite a bit of soldering, and I was holding it on all the time because you have to hold the button in to keep it hot.
To keep it hot.
Yeah, and it heats up like that fast. It's faster than most electrical ones. I guess it's just putting a lot of energy there at one time, you know. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't use it for everything, but but
it's good for your Go box.
Oh man, if you're outside doing something,
Yeah.
I need to fix the wire. I don't have to take it in the house now, you know.
The question I would have is, can you solder on can you put on a PL259 on like something like LMR 400 on big coax cable?
It comes with different
that takes
size
a lot of
tips.
heat. Well, I'm not talking about that. That takes a lot of heat to get those things.
It's like 900 degrees, I think. That's what it said, something like that. It's pretty high.
And it's got multiple tips. I'll have to look at that. I need to watch
It's
the
got
video.
a really
anyway.
nice. I was doing like a little, something like this, like a little PC board. I was doing the 49er kit with it, and it's got really nice fine tip for doing that kind of stuff. Worked really good for that.
Yeah, so that ISO tip, if you got the same setup that I got, they reached out to us and they said, would you like one of these? Don't need to make a video, just like what you're doing, keep up the good work. And I think that was pretty nice of them.
Yeah, and they did put a code. They gave me a code today for it's hard to find the actual kit on Amazon. Somebody at one of the I think Chuck sent it to me the other day because all I had was just the gun itself. And but they sent me
soldering on YouTube.
The soldering iron, yes. The soldering iron, yes, not a. But they sent me today. They sent me a code if you order it through their place, which it was a little bit cheaper than Amazon anyhow. So got a moth in here.
Nice. Jim, what's coming up on your channel?
I dropped a video yesterday, a quick demo of filters, or was that today? That was today.
Yep.
And I should have a Pi-Star kind of part 2 thing about tweaking the digital modes in Pi-Star, and that'll be coming out tomorrow.
Cool. And on my channel, I have some news on the new Zygu radio that's coming out, and I'll have another video with some more information on that tomorrow.
You better
and
get
apparently,
out
I know
early.
more about that radio than Zygu does.
You better get out early because I'm going to put one out first.
I mean, I know that's like a marketing picture, but it looks pretty badass. I mean,
So
it
there's
kind of
actually
reminded
3
me of
different
the lab.
photos floating around.
Is there?
Well, have you got them? Show them on here.
I don't have them handy here, but we'll
Are you
be
under
on my video
NDA?
tomorrow.
Since
I
you're
wish
the,
I was under NDA. I keep reaching out to them like, hey guys, I'm happy to help you
Right.
out, help you make your products better, maybe do a little beta testing and some bug fixing and
Yeah, they can
round
send
out
me
your
one
feature
to
set.
test.
And they're like, how many would you like to buy? I'm like, I already have one. I'm not a dealer. I just want to help you guys make a better product. And then they kind of disappear. So they're really weird. Maybe it's a language barrier issue.
Man, it looks cool. The picture I saw looked interesting.
yeah.
And I think the
look really
6100 was kind of a pretty cool radio too.
I actually the 6100. If that thing worked twice as good as it would be like a. I mean, they've got it kind of working now, I guess. But the screen
After
on that thing is really nice.
475 firmware updates. Yeah,
that's
it's a gorgeous screen on the 6100. It absolutely is. And a huge step up. I had a 5105 for a while too. And I thought it worked great. But the 6100 was
And that was a pretty good radio, though. The 5105.
5105 was. The one I had, I never had any problems with.
Yeah, there wasn't any. Well, I almost bought that instead of a KX2. I just figured if I was going to sell it later, the KX2 would be easier to sell. Which
Probably
I
so.
don't sell anything. So
Jeff is saying the 6100 has a lot of birdies.
yeah,
Jeff, have you uploaded the latest version of the firmware? Because it's probably changed since you typed that message.
yes, twice.
That may be.
Right.
And Phil, you're right. We talked about this a long time ago when the 6100 came out, and if you get Ape started on it, there'll be a rant. But yeah, it was kind of pre-release when it got released.
It's not a radio for the spectrally conscious user. It's a radio to play with. I wouldn't say that I got $600 worth of radio when I bought it. I would say that I got $600 worth of enjoyment when I bought it. And there's a difference between those two things.
Yeah.
Right.
It was fun to play with.
And he's Zygu Jesus. I mean, right there, that guy right there,
Nice.
Zygu Jesus.
Nice. All right, folks, I'm
Alrighty.
hitting the button. Thank you very much for joining us on the
thanks,
stream
everybody.
and talking a little bit about our friend George, Mr. Ohm.
Mr. O.
We'll discuss cool
Later on.
rooms and